Time to talk to someone who actually knows what they're talking about. He's the chief executive of an organisation that is called Generation Rent. It campaigns, you guessed it, to improve the housing system for young people. And his name is Ben Twomey. Welcome to the Today podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start as basic as we can be. Generation Rent. Who are they? Why are they angry?
Well, Generation Rent is a phrase that we use for the 12 million private renters who have found themselves, trapped in private renting. We're not making a choice here. We've not necessarily chosen private renting because it's so attractive to us. It's that there's no ability for many of us to own our own homes now, certainly not quickly. And there's no ability to access social housing for those that need it as well. There's not enough of those homes being built.
So what's changed, Ben? Because 20 odd years ago, when I was a wee young man, this feeling of rage that people have about how they're having to spend so much money on the damn house that they're in, and it's not even theirs. It just wasn't this big factor in our national life. What's changed that means there is a generation growing up who have this kind of despondency or this rage about rent?
The rage, I suppose, is actually, it's more like despair, I think. It's the fact that for so long it's been so unfair in renting. There's such a power imbalance that we face that people are just fed up of having to do it when they're paying so much for a service or for a home that just doesn't work for them.
What is that power imbalance? Spell it out. What is that?
Throughout the entire renter experience, you have a power imbalance between the landlord and between the tenant. So for a start, you could be happy in your home. Many renters are, and they could have good landlords, but we're still paying a third of our wages into having that home. And then any moment, though, we could have a Section 21 eviction notice. So I could go home and find that on my door.
What, outside the jargon, you call a no-fault eviction?
That's exactly right, yeah. So you've done nothing wrong, you're not behind on your rent, you've looked after the place, and you find yourself evicted. Clock starts ticking then. You've got 8 weeks in which to pack your bags and get out of the home. And during that time, you're searching for a new home. What you'd find, if that happens today, is that rents are up 22% in the last 2 years. So it might be that it's unaffordable to live in your local area, so you're being ripped away from your community. This happened to Peter, one of our Generation Rent supporters, who is a care worker, who had to actually leave his job, leave all the relationships that he had with the people in the care home, because he couldn't afford to live in the area anymore. He couldn't afford to get there. So then you go and find a place. You better not have a pet if you want to find a place, because there's so much discrimination from landlords saying that they don't want pets in their homes. We've got a supporter, Yvonne, who has a pet called Martin, a pet cat, who she describes as her only comfort. She's right now deciding whether or not she risks facing homelessness because she can't find somewhere that will take the pet, or she has to give up her cat. So that's the situation. Yeah, even a cat. We're not talking about a pack of Great Danes that you're putting through the home. So let's say you're lucky, you don't have a pet, you manage to find somewhere that's within your budget, and then you put down the offer based on the landlord's asking price. And because there's so many people queued around the block, the landlord starts a bidding war. They pit tenant against tenant.
I've even heard stories of people going in with a wad of cash, saying, here's the rent for the whole year.
That's exactly right, yeah. So it's not just about the price of the rent, it's how many months you want to give up front, it's about how long you want to stay in the property as well. We've heard of WhatsApp groups where the landlord puts the prospective tenants into a WhatsApp group and they have to outbid each other on that group.
My son, who just graduated from Manchester University, wanted to stay living in the world's greatest city, looked for a flat. And from memory, I think he tried 200 different places, quite often filling in complicated forms, which got no acknowledgement. You certainly weren't told that you hadn't got the flat. Is that only in hotspots? Manchester is a housing hotspot, clearly central London is, or is it common in other parts of the country as well?
It's getting significantly worse everywhere, but there are hotspots where the demand is significantly higher, and that's where politicians have been particularly active on a local level, calling for abilities to slam the brakes onto rent.
You say that rents have risen by 22% in the past 2 years, nationally?
Yeah, that's right.
That's an astonishing market failure, right? If you look at that as a consumer, if someone in the world of business looks at that, in a market where you've got a 22% rise over 2 years, you've got a real problem with supply or control. And you'd think someone would want to fix that.
This isn't the price of crisps changing, so you move to chocolates. This is people's homes. We have no choice of where to go.
Market failure would mean that there'd be people on the right say, market solution. You actually have to make it more profitable to rent a house. So far from controlling the rents, far from surrounding landlords with more and more rules, which makes people think, well, forget it, I won't bother to rent out my house. They would argue, you actually have to make it better for them to rent their homes.
And you have to make it a competitive market, Nick. That's the point. People, defenders of capitalism on the right, would say You need a proper free market, which isn't rigged in favour of the few lucky lords.
Yeah, we would love choice in the market, if you want to call it that, but it is about our homes. Mostly people want to stay in their homes. So rather than talking about profit, we'd want to talk about loss, and the loss of people's homes that's happening every 15 minutes because of Section 21 no-fault evictions. Politicians need to wake up to the fact that there are 12 million people in England who will be angry, will be despairing in the current situation, and anything that you can give us, we're not asking for much. We're asking for security in our home, quality homes, and somewhere we can afford to live. That's all we're asking for. If you can deliver that, then absolutely renters will be paying attention.
Yeah, Ben Twomey of Generation Rent, thank you very much indeed.